Let's talk about relationship.
Is there? Oh, there you go. All right. Let's talk about relationship.
So the last time we got together, we talked about relationship, and last year we had spent the bulk of 6 months leading up to the dynamic of relationship that exists between husband and wife. So we talked about just a brief synopsis. We talked about God as a relational being. We talked about the relationship that exists inside of the Godhead. We talked about the relationship that exists then because we are created as individuals that are to be in relationship. We begin to explore some of the different relationships that exist for us. The familial relationship, relationship to child to parent, parent to child, the relationships between siblings. We talked about those types of relationships. So we've been going from the center outward, and we ended just briefly introducing and touching on the relationship that now exists outside of the familial to the relationship that is created then between a husband and a wife.
Okay.
So Scripture tells us that foundation.
Yes.
I mean, it's been 6 months.
I know you always like to give that foundation.
Foundation's important. In Scripture they talk about the cornerstone.
Right.
Okay, so I know you're not a big fan of the foundation thing, but
No, I'm a huge fan of foundation.
Scripture is big on foundation. So here we are, and we're now moving outwards towards the relationship that exists between husband and wife. Now, and so we'll spend a couple weeks probably talking a little bit about this because it's a complex relationship.
Okay.
It's complex because essentially what you're doing is you're taking. Scripture says that the man in the relationship. First of all, let me clarify very quickly that if there's any question, there should not be. But we believe that men and women are succinctly men and women, and that there is no confusion in the distinction of the genders. So we believe that a man and a woman come together as a man and a woman, and it is from that seed that the relationship of marriage then blossoms, and that is representative of God's design.
Yeah, I mean there can be confusion about that, but it is confusion.
There is no confusion from Scripture.
That's what
Yes, yeah. No, they're trying. Well, now, no, I get your point, Josh, because nowadays they're trying to confuse everything.
Well, it's not thought of as confusion, right? It used to be called like gender dysphoria, for instance. It's not really thought of as a disorder. And that's the point I'm making is, yeah, people are confused about that.
Yeah,
and it should be called confusion.
Yeah.
Because it is clear in pretty much every other biological community, like across the animal kingdom, it's clear what your gender is.
Right. We teach and uphold gender euphoria.
Okay. What specifically about the male and female relationship are you wanting to talk about?
Well, at this point, what I'm going to point out is that we have at this point recognized that male and female are born into a family unit, and it is within that family unit that they then develop their understanding of relationship from that family unit. So one family unit may have a completely, in fact, I guarantee, one family unit has one idea of relationship that is passed through from generation to generation. Another family unit will have the same thing. a idea of relationship that is passed down from generation to generation.
You mean to say that they may have different
Very much so.
ideas?
Yeah,
Okay.
very much
Yeah.
so. Very much so. It is likely that that has not been. I'm going to say that probably 95 or better percent of the time, it is that dynamic that exists inside of the family unit has not been explored or discussed to any great detail.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah. There's a lot of parenting by observation,
yeah,
or not observation, parenting by like passive parenting, right?
yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, without commentary, without teaching, without structure. But again, that goes back to the previous conversation of this idea that information is something that belongs to anybody else but us.
okay,
Whether it's the church worker, you know, in Christian circles, it is the youth worker, which is not a biblical position. I just want to throw out there. It is not a deacon. It is not an elder. There's no such thing as a youth leader in Scripture. This is not to say that we don't love our youth workers, but that is not a sacred position. It does not exist. It is merely a functional position. Sorry to offend anybody who's a youth worker. But that being said,
well, I mean that, yeah, and that, yes, and I wholeheartedly agree, and that would bring us into a whole separate subject that we'll talk maybe at some point about the church administration, how that all works. But the reality of it is that all of these side things that go on in churches, the youth worker,
well, that's really prominent though. Sunday school teacher,
the music director, the Sunday school teacher, yeah, it just goes on and on.
yeah, those things have been given responsibility to teach discipline, discipleship,
Right.
and that's just not biblical. It's extra biblical, and it could be toxic. And then you add to it going outside, the same people who bring their kids to church on the weekends ship their kids off during the week to Rome, to the city.
Yeah, in fact, many I have known of parents who view Sunday school as a mechanism to free up time for themselves so that they can
Yeah.
go have Sunday brunch or whatever, because the kids are being babysat in Sunday school.
Well, there's a lot of parents who
That's terrible.
there's a lot of parents who pat themselves on the back because they themselves do not involve themselves in church, but they do send their kids to church,
Yes.
and that's reprehensible also.
Yeah.
But it plays to this general idea that we want to take away from ourselves any sort of responsibility in the raising of our children. And so that goes all the way from sending them to public school, to sending them to Sunday school, or to youth group, to teaching them about what our marriage relationships look like. And that's not to say that public school is a bad thing in and of itself. It's not a thing that should exist. I want to be clear. I don't believe in it. But is it bad? Is it bad to send my children to a place where they can get information for free that's given by the state? If that is not the only place they get information, then no, it's not bad.
Slight correction: it's not free.
Okay,
Your taxes pay for it.
sure. It's free to them.
Yeah.
It
It has the illusion of being free. It is not free
If-
on many levels.
well, depends on if you're poor enough. Yeah, there's a lot of depends on in that. So it's a difficult problem to unravel, because it's so ingrained specifically in American culture. Get rid of all of your responsibility.
Yeah. So imagine now. So to keep this foundation, keep this in context. So you have two individuals that have grown up with no distinct understanding of the backgrounds of how they are to function in relationship, who desire to come together for a number of reasons. And that can be that is, unless you are biblically grounded, and unless you try to approach it from a biblical position, that is a recipe for disaster.
So we have a couple comments.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit, the ultimate responsibility, this is from John Parker, should be on the parents. These government-run programs should be helpmates to us, not dictates on what the kiddos can and can't learn.
Okay.
Heidi Parker,
We'll develop that.
perhaps no relation, says, you have rights given by God. Are you foregoing those rights when you turn them over to the schools? Essentially, you do. Should it be that way? No. Lucy Brown says, some parents have no idea what healthy parenting is all about, and they trust educators to teach their children. This is unfortunate.
All great observations.
I just want to be clear, like, so the audience knows that we're not going to be spending all of our time talking about submission structure, though, right?
Nope.
Because we spent a large portion talking about the male-female
Yep.
submission structure, and
Yep.
I don't want, the audience to... When we're dealing with a relationship, it's huge, and you can't really get away from the male-female relationship as
Right.
much as our society tries to.
Right.
So that's going to be the starting point for a lot of discussion.
Yes.
It doesn't mean we're going to talk for another year and a half about
No, we're not
submission.
going to live there. No.
Okay.
No. Your fears are allied. We're not going to live there. So, but my point being that you have two individuals that come out of this type of a hodgepodge of who knows what, and their desire is to come together and to create a family unit that is then based upon their ability to to have a relationship with each other and to make that relationship successful and work. And right up front, I guess the reason why right up front for foundation purposes is because it's difficult. And what we do talk about when I do counseling, premarital counseling, and I believe that you do this also, Josh, but when I do premarital counseling, one of the things that I try to make very clear is that it's going to be work.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not something where you can passively hope that they're gonna fit, because that's just not the case.
Well, and I think the emphasis in that people are always weirded out by is a large portion of the work is personal work. It's not group work.
Right.
And a lot of people are like, well, I'm all down for the work. But what they really mean is I'm down to watch my partner work.
Yeah. Yeah. Particularly, sorry guys, but particularly the men.
Yeah.
Men. What I have discovered over the years in dealing with marital conflict is that men are lazy. Just because of the way that they view things, remember, men are going after the prize, and once they've got the prize, hey, they've got the prize.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to play into the stereotype of men being lazy. There is a reason why that stereotype exists.
Sure.
So I don't know that men are lazy. They definitely are creatures of habit, and what they seek determines what that is. So if a man is focused on performing, right, and that's what he's focused on, then he's going to be focused on he's going to enable that focus. And so if he's focused on performing, being the man that he's supposed to be for God and for his family and so on and so forth, then what that's going to cultivate is a life of discipline.
Yes.
It's not going to look lazy.
Yeah, yes, I agree.
That's the thing. If a man is focused on creating ease for his family, then it's all about his perception of what ease is. And so he's going to create a life of leisure, and that's what he's going to be on. The other thing is that because men are focus driven and they are really good at honing in on a single target, then it looks like they're lazy about everything else that they're looking at, right? Because they have the peripheral vision and then they've got the single laser target, right? And on that one thing, they might be really determined. And it's really funny. What was I watching? I was watching Hardball with Keanu Reeves. And, here's this guy, he can't keep a job. He's just, he just kind of sucks at life, right? But man, is he hustling.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's out there.
He's
and
busy.
He's busy,
Yeah,
right?
he's busy.
And that's the thing. You see all these guys who are deadbeats, right? It's not that they don't know how to be busy. It's that they are focused on the wrong things and are moving in the wrong direction. And so it appears that they're lazy when really it's not that they're lazy innately. It's that they're unfocused and have the wrong metric by which to judge success.
Yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that going on. So basically, what we're going to explore then in relationships now, in particular, is this relationship, this dynamic that exists that Scripture tells us that the man and wife are to come together. The man is to leave his father and mother and cleave to a wife, and the two should become one. And the dynamic that exists then between a man and woman and the relationship that exists can be complex and difficult to be successful at. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to explore that further beginning next week. now that we have laid proper foundation. Let's close our time together. You might be surprised, but if you look at your watch, we have been together almost an hour, and we want to try to be timely in how we are stewards of that hour, and so we're going to close our time here.